Sobriety Essays number 50. Humor Heals. The story I am about to share is in its own way sad and tragic. That we had to walk through it without drinking is just one more miracle. What I hope to point out is that in the middle of all this turmoil, there was really a touch of humor that carried me through. I got sober on April 19th, 1984. I was 46 years old. My daughter got sober on June 6th, 1984, and she was 18 years old. I have 57 days more sobriety than my daughter, and on occasion, I like to remind her that I have 57 days more than her. Her being 18 and an active member of AA, at 3 years of sobriety, it is girl meets boy on the AA campus. They get married and eventually present my wife and I with a beautiful grandson. He is still a joy to us. They were married about 3 years when this guy decides to take up robbing banks for a living. Have you ever heard the story that floats around AA about the sobering up horse thief? What you got is a sober horse thief. I am at work and receive a phone call from the local sheriff's department, and this detective wants to come over to the plant and show me some pictures of who they think is my son-in-law robbing banks. I refuse. I tell him that he can come over the house when I get home from work. In the meantime, I call my wife and prepare her. At 5:30 that evening, I get to entertain 5 FBI agents and 1 detective. We look at the pictures, and sure enough, there's my son-in-law pictures in several photos. I think by now you're beginning to get the picture. The FBI stake out the house, and they have me try and get a hold of my daughter as to get her and my grandson out of the house before the arrest. The line is busy, so I call my daughter's sponsor and let her know what is happening. Then I get a frantic phone call from my daughter telling me that my little 3-year-old grandson got to watch his dad thrown to the ground and handcuffed as guns drawn. Now that is sad and tragic. Now my own feelings by this time is that of anger, sadness, resignation, resentment, and feelings of betrayal. My gut is turning over in pure pain, and I'm trying to work my program, which includes talking to my sponsor. We rush over to my daughter's house a couple of miles away to comfort her. I continue to try and get a hold of my sponsor on the phone. No luck. In the meantime, my daughter is calling her sponsor, and between phone calls, curling up in her dad's arms and crying. I decide to spend the night at my daughter's so that whatever I can do, I would be there. If it is only listening to her and holding her hand, that was the only thing I could think of doing. Finally, at 9:30 at night, my sponsor calls me and I tell him what's going on. I told him about my anger, my resentment, my feelings of betrayal. He said something that I found interesting. He said, "Chuck, you are entitled to your feelings." I don't know why that caught me by surprise, that I was entitled to my feelings. I told my sponsor that the only thing I could do right now was to stay with my daughter and hold on to her if she needed me. I would be there. My sponsor said, "Chuck, at a time like this, being of service to others is probably the best thing you can do." I hadn't thought about that. Just spending the night with my daughter and grandson was being of service. The next few days were a matter of moving the two of them out of the apartment and back with mom and dad. I was so grateful that several members of AA came and helped my daughter move. The night after the arrest, 2 women from my daughter's home group came, picked her up, and took her to a meeting. She was not fit to drive, and they came and got her. Now that is love. So I'm still feeling these feelings of anger and betrayal, but I am also trying to work my program. I know that I have to find some way of letting these feelings out. I had learned a long time ago that a problem shared is half a problem. I know that anger and resentment will lead back to drinking, and I don't want to do that. On the fourth day of work, I go on a smoke break with my best friend. He is also the first guy I ever sponsored. So he and I go for a walk, and I'm pouring out my feelings to him. I'm describing how my insides feel. He quietly listens to me, and then when I get all done, he puts his arm around my shoulder and says, Chuck, you now know what Jesse James' father-in-law felt like. I have to tell you, I had to laugh. I mean, from way down inside of me, I had to laugh. I don't think I've ever heard anything so funny. Chuck, you now know what Jesse James' father-in-law felt like. The anger was gone, and I just set about doing whatever it was required to do. As it was, I ended up being a witness for the prosecution, and my daughter ended up being a witness for the defense. And we rode in the same car to and from the trial. And on the way home, she thanked me for being her dad. To sum all this up, the bank robber was convicted of 2 counts of robbing banks, and he had done this cold sober. He served his 4 years and was very active in AA in prison. He got out, and one time I got to tell him the story about the Jesse James father-in-law felt like. He thought that was the funniest thing he had ever heard. I haven't seen him in several years now, and for some reason that just seemed fine with me. My daughter got a divorce, and shortly after the conviction, and 5 years later, boy meets girl on the AA campus one more time. This is a school teacher and with several years on the program. As far as I know, it looks like a good marriage. That's between them and their God. I now have a 16-year-old grandson who is the joy of my life. He just got his driver's license, which worries Grandpa. But I am working with my attitude, let go, let God. It is a wonderful thing to know that my grandson has never seen his mom take a drink, his stepdad take a drink, or his grandpa take a drink. Now that's a miracle. I really do think that Jesse James' father-in-law's story felt like